Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service Facebook Live event. It's the first time I've done anything like this before, so I'm hoping it's working and I'm not talking to myself. It's great you've joined us. Thank you ever so much for joining us. My name is Brook and I'm the Chief Fire Officer of Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service, and I'm going to be answering some of your questions tonight. We've had a large amount of questions, so thank you, and we're going to try and cover as many of them as we possibly can this evening. If I don't cover your question, please forgive me, and please do drop us an email and we'll make sure you get a response to your questions. So thank you to all the people who've already sent in questions. It's much appreciated. It helps me to be able to prepare, which is very, very helpful. But if you are joining now live and you'd like to send us another question, then please do, and we'll do our best. You can put it in the comments box and we'll try to get to it if we possibly can. So before we start, let me just tell you a little bit about Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service. We have 17 fire stations that cover the whole of Warwickshire that look after a population of just under 600,000 people. Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service employs 450 people, and just under 400 of those are operational firefighters. We have a fleet of vehicles. We have 37 response vehicles. Now you might be surprised by this, but only 23 of those are actually fire engines. The rest of the fleet are other types of vehicles, specialist response type vehicles that we have as well. Now, you might know the Fire and Rescue Service best for our responding to fires and to other emergencies, and that's an absolutely critical part of what we do. But we also do other things. We do lots and lots of work around prevention, which is about stopping emergencies from happening in the first place. And we also do lots around protection, making sure that the buildings that we live in and that we work in are as safe as possible as well. We respond to all sorts of incidents, a whole range of different types of emergencies, and we usually attend about 4,000 calls for help each year. So we actually respond to 4,000 incidents. We get more calls than that, but we respond to approximately 4,000 calls every year. Now, only about 30% of those are actually fires. The rest are other types of emergencies. And one of those other types of emergencies that we go to are road traffic collisions. Warwickshire has a large amount of motorway within our area, a lot higher than most areas. We have 87 miles or 140 kilometres worth of motorway, so it's not surprising, is it, that we have a large number of road traffic collisions, about 300 a year, which is about 8% of our incidents. So that's a little bit about us. Now let's get started with some of your questions. So the first question we have here is from Tia, so thank you very much, Tia, and it's: have you ever seen firefighters on TV shows and laughed because of how inaccurate they are portrayed? And I think absolutely. So often we get the Hollywood picture of what the Fire and Rescue Service is through TV shows and through films, and it doesn't portray who we are or what we do. So yes, absolutely do laugh at some of these shows, and unfortunately it does create a barrier for some people thinking that they can join the Fire and Rescue Service. We've got to break down some of these barriers. So I hope that some of you listening will choose to go down to your local fire station and talk to your firefighters and really understand what the fire service is actually like. Second question then we have is from Colin, which says: are there any plans to update your ageing fleet of pumping and special appliances? Thanks, Colin, for that question. So we have a long-term plan for the replacement of our vehicles. We would like to speed up replacement of vehicles, and we are looking at innovative ways of doing this. We've recently introduced a number of brand new Volvo fire appliances into our fleet, and that will be continuing over the next couple of years. We're also committed to reducing the impacts of climate change, and we're looking at electric vehicles. Now, unfortunately, technology isn't quite there yet for us to rely on electric for our fire appliances, but potentially in the future it could be hydrogen or other things. But one thing we are really proud of in Warwickshire is our turntable ladder that's located at Leamington and can reach the highest buildings in Warwickshire, and it's an absolutely fantastic bit of kit. So we're absolutely focused on making sure that we have a fleet into the future that's fit for purpose. The next question we've got then is from John, and that says, with all the new houses being built in the county, there are many, but Rugby, Leamington, Long, Itchington, thousands of homes near the University with Warwickshire's boundary. Will you be getting a lot more money from local council tax? And will you be building more fire stations to cater for the growing population? Okay, so the Fire and Rescue Service is funded in 3 ways across the country. So it's funded through council tax, through business rates, and through central government funding. Now, Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service is a county council fire and rescue service, so funding goes into the county council and then is allocated as appropriate to the fire and rescue service. So with more houses will come an increase in the number of households paying council tax, and this, however, will be balanced against things like inflation and increased costs at the moment being experienced by the county council. So it may not directly link to be able to provide new fire stations, new vehicles. It won't work quite as directly as that in Warwickshire. What Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service does do, though, is that we continually monitor and assess the risks in our communities. And this will include increases in population and increases in housing. Now, we're very pleased that legislation now means that new houses will have interlinked smoke alarms within them. They'll have fit-for-purpose electrical wiring, and they're built very safely. So as long as people take care, the risk of new property and new housing develops may not be quite as high as we think it is, but we'll always monitor that risk as we move forward. Thanks, John, for that question. Okay, the next question then is from John, who says, my wife waited over 2 hours for an ambulance last month. When will you do what the Americans do and others and support our breaking NHS? Thanks ever so much for that question, John. The first thing I'd like to say is that I hope that your wife is making a full recovery now, and I'm sorry that she's been unwell. Now, we are ready and prepared to help the ambulance service whenever they need us. Our firefighters are not trained paramedics, but they do have a high level of training in relation to first aid and trauma management. And at any time the ambulance service need our help, we will always respond and help them. Right now, I think the best thing that we are doing is that we're trying to stop people needing to use the NHS, keeping people out of hospital in the first place. So a big part of what we do is to preventing accidents from stopping fires happening in the first place. So we regularly share advice on how people can keep safe, including things like safety in the home, safety around water, bonfire safety and fireworks. We also carry out a large number of safe and wells in people's homes every single year in Warwickshire. These safe and wells provide guidance and advice on fire safety, but also on other ways in which we can stay safe and well. Another part of the services we offer to our communities is a hospital I'll get my words out in a minute, hospital to home service, where we transport elderly and vulnerable people home after a stay in hospital. What that does is it helps to enable beds to be freed up when otherwise they couldn't be, by us taking people home from hospital. And it gives us an opportunity to make sure that person is settled back into their home, they have a working smoke alarm, which is really important, that they have all the safety arrangements, food, drink, that they need to make sure they're safe and well in their home. So it links back to fire vulnerability and risk. Last year we did about 1,500 hospital to home transportation from hospital, which means we released hospital beds for the NHS. So we are absolutely committed to supporting the health service, the NHS and the ambulance. Next question then is, does Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service rescue cats and that have got stuck up trees, and ducklings who have got stuck down drains? So thankfully we don't have to rescue too many cats or ducklings, but we can, and we do when we need to. One of the strangest calls we've had recently was to rescue a parrot that had escaped. I don't know how we knew it was in trouble. I don't know if it spoke to us, if the owner had taught it some fire safety messaging or emergency messaging, but we helped a parrot and got that back. I guess it wouldn't have survived if it had been left and not brought back to its owner. We also have a large animal rescue unit at Rugby with highly trained firefighters there in large animal rescue. They respond to large animals such as cows and horses that are stuck in ditches and sheep in the canals. Sheep are incredible, so I've been to a few rescues with sheep, and when they go in the canal or into water, their woolly coats get incredibly heavy and they just can't get themselves out of the canal, and they can absolutely drown. So an interesting one for us to be respond to. We always work in partnership with the RSPCA, with vets and with the owners when undertaking animal rescues. So the role of a firefighter is certainly varied and interesting, and I would absolutely encourage anyone to think about it as a career. This next question we have is from James. Would having the county boundary redrawn to include Coventry be an advantage in terms of better response cover for the communities of Coventry and Warwickshire? Okay, so again, this is an interesting question because the county boundaries haven't always been as they are. So it's an interesting question. Now, Fire and Rescue Services work closely together and have arrangements and agreements in place to support each other and to work together. So boundaries, imaginary lines on maps, are not a barrier to the service we provide to our communities. Our fantastic fire control receives 999 calls and send fire engines to emergencies, and they will be in communication with our neighbouring fire and rescue services should an incident be on the border. And a great example of that was during the hot extreme weather we've had, where our firefighters and everyone within Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service has been amazing, where we've had a few wildfires that were right on the borders and we weren't sure if it was in our area or in someone else's area. And in that moment when people really need us, we don't consider that. We always make sure that we put our communities first and send a response. Thanks for that question, James. Next question we have here is from Keith. Thanks, Keith, for this question. We have, with increased risk of fires from climate change and considerable issues with things such as arson, why are you not keeping 2 daytime fire crews in Nuneaton? Surely we should be adding resources to solve the issues at Bedworth and on the M6 without taking cover from the rest of the borough. Thanks, Keith, for that question. So we aim to have our fire stations in the best possible locations to respond through prevention, protection and response activities. But it is important to note just a couple of things. So firstly, fire stations do not put out fires or rescue people. The building is a welfare facility and hopefully a building where the communities feel they can come and you can use it and feel safe there. But they don't put out fires or help people in the event of emergency. Our brilliant firefighters, our vehicles and the equipment we provide, that is what makes What we need to think about in that area is how can we move resources around at different times of the day to make the biggest difference. And we're currently looking at the moment, and we're also out to consultation on our community risk management plan. And there'll be a link put in the comments box around how you can respond to that consultation. And that talks about our approach to resourcing to risk, putting resources in the most appropriate place at the different times of the day based on risk. Our next question then is from David. Thanks for this question, David. What does it feel like when you get the call to go out to an incident? What goes through your mind? Thanks, David. Great question. So from the day I've joined the Fire and Rescue Service to today, so 22 years, I've loved every single minute of it. The feeling you get when you help someone in that moment of need is absolutely incredible. Now, one way we help people is emergency calls. When the call comes in, you get a mixed feeling of excitement and focus. Your training kicks in because our firefighters are incredibly well trained, and you quickly start to focus on what needs to be done. Where is the emergency? What is it? What do we need to prepare and think about? And how can we start to resolve that incident? Now, interestingly, I get a similar feeling when we make a difference through prevention and through protection. Our protection teams keep businesses in business, and when you feel like you've kept a business in business, employees, the economy, it's an incredible feeling. And just this week, I was with a team of firefighters who responded to a grass fire. It had been started by someone who was homeless, who was trying to heat food. And now our firefighters put out the fire, but then they went to the nearest Costa Coffee. I don't know if I could say that live, if I'm promoting Costa. I'm certainly not doing that, but they went to Costa and got them a sandwich and a hot drink, just to make sure that person was okay. This is what our amazing firefighters do in Warwickshire. And when I see and hear all of these stories, it gives me an amazing sense of purpose and a massive respect for our firefighters. Okay, so next question we've got here is, how do you decide which businesses you visit to check that they are following fire safety regulations? Thanks, Paul, for this question. So this decision is part of how we manage risk. So we have approximately 33,000 commercial premises and businesses in Warwickshire that fall under the fire safety regulations. So we can't visit every single premises, every single business. So we have different levels of service. We provide everyone with guidance and advice. So if they ring or call us or look at our website, there is a lot of advice and guidance that we'll give to everyone. And then we categorise these 33,000 premises into very high risk, medium risk, low risk and very low risk. And we then have an inspection programme that starts at the very top where the risk is highest and works its way down on a schedule. So we're very careful in ensuring that we visit the most at-risk premises. And I guess the most complex type of premises could be hospitals or factories and manufacturing process where they use chemicals. So they would be an example of some of the very high-risk premises that we would visit more often than other types of businesses. So that is how we approach looking at businesses to make sure they're complying with fire safety regulations. And again, that's part of our consultation. So our consultation is out on our 5-year plan around resourcing to risk, which includes a question in there around, do you think we're approaching this in the right way? And we'd love to hear your views. So the next question, okay, Tia, it's one of those questions. So, has anyone used a fire appliance, or a truck is what Tia's put, to impress a date? Okay, so not that I'm aware of, and that's definitely not the reason we have them. So I don't think I want to say any more on that one, but thank you, Tia, for that question. Okay, next question then is from someone who doesn't want to be named. So, how old is your oldest retained firefighter? So we call them on-call firefighters now. So it's no longer a retained firefighter, it's an on-call firefighter. But how old is our oldest on-call firefighter? So, I'm not going to give an age, as the person who is the oldest firefighter in Warwickshire may not like me giving away their age. But I would like to say that there's no upper age limit for either a whole-time firefighter or an on-call firefighter. Anyone over the age of 18 is welcome to apply. People are appointed based on meeting the required standards and suitability in relation to behaviours and values rather than age. And we're always keen to have the best possible people from Warwickshire. So we really encourage people from all backgrounds to make sure that we get the best possible talent into Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service. We want a diverse, representative fire and rescue service that brings together the range of experiences that people have. There is an annual fitness assessment that every firefighter has to pass, though, every year, irrespective of age, and you have to pass that. Okay, so the next question we've got then is around what's the difference between an on-call and a whole-time firefighter. Okay, so the difference between these two is really around their contracts of employment, really. So on-call firefighters, they will be doing this role usually not as their primary work. So what happens is they will get an annual retaining amount of money, which is a small amount of money. So most on-call firefighters, again, this is a credit to them, they do it because they want to keep their communities safe. Then they'll be given training as appropriate, and they'll then have a pager, and they have to be able to respond from within 5 minutes of the station, and they allocate a certain number of hours they're willing to do, and when their pager goes off, they have to be within 5 minutes of the station. They'll come and they'll respond to emergency incidents. Our whole-time firefighters, it's generally their full-time employment, it's their primary employment, and they'll be on a full-time contract of employment, and they'll work shift systems, and they'll complete a certain number of days every single month, and they will do prevention work, which is about raising awareness of fire safety in the community, safe and well checks, and they'll visit business premises to keep them safe, alongside responding to emergencies. Now, both contracts of employment, both types of firefighter, different types of employment, are equally valued here in Warwickshire and are essential in the delivering of our services. We can't run our service effectively and respond quickly to incidents without all of these people that make a huge difference on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so we are flying here through these questions, although I know I am going to run out of time, because I am going to finish after half an hour, because I know the sound of my voice probably after half an hour is enough. So if I haven't got to all your questions, please forgive me on this, and we'll email you a response. So the next question we've got is from Sheila, which is, how many stations are fully staffed and how many only have on-call firefighters there? Okay, so we in Warwickshire have 9 on-call stations. We have 3 stations where there is a dual crewing situation. So there's one fire appliance there, or a fire engine there, that's whole time, and there's one that's on call. So we have 3 stations like that, and then we have 5 whole time stations. So that's our setup in Warwickshire. Okay, next question then, and this is an anonymous question again. Do you need a driving licence to become a firefighter? Okay, so you do need a full UK driving licence to become a firefighter, a whole-time firefighter that is. So we need people to drive the fire engines, and the starting point for that is a full UK driving licence, and then you'll have to pass additional assessments to upgrade your driving licence as appropriate for the type of vehicle, and then you'll also have an assessment on driving with the blue lights and the sirens. So yes, you do have to have a driving licence to become a firefighter. Okay, the next question is from Tom. Do you have to live with an address in Warwickshire to apply to join Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service as a trainee whole-time firefighter? Thanks, Tom, for this question. I know why you're asking this, because there are absolutely services that do that across the country. It's an option that we'll always keep open to us, because we do want to make sure that there's employment within Warwickshire. However, at this time there are no restrictions in relation to postcode for whole-time firefighters. Okay, next question then. This is another anonymous question here. So, what qualifications do I need to become an on-call firefighter? Okay, the requirements for an on-call firefighter are that you have to be over 18, the age of 18. You have to be able to communicate really well with members of the public. You have to demonstrate our values and behaviours. You have to be able to get to a station within 5 minutes while you're on call. Residents who live further away than 5 minutes, but perhaps have a job more locally, or can work from any location, could use our fire station to be within that 5 minutes. There's some flexibilities there we really want to focus in on to make it as flexible as possible. But apart from that, there are no qualifications, but you will have to go through an application process which would include online and practical tests and assessments, and then you have to go through some basic training to make sure that you've got the skills, the qualities that we need in Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service to be a professional firefighter, and then you'll go through a development programme for several years before you become a competent firefighter. So I hope that helps. Okay, next question is quite similar, which is there a minimum number of hours you need to commit to become an on-call firefighter? So our on-call firefighters, they have to attend a weekly training session. It's usually between 2 and 4 hours a week at their local fire station. It tends to be on Tuesday evenings or Thursday evenings, and that means they can maintain their competencies during that training night every single week. After that, it will depend on the local requirements at that station, that fire station, and it can be 120 hours a week or a minimum usually of about 40 hours a week availability. So that's what we're looking for an on-call firefighter. So it is a big commitment, but it gives real purpose and makes a real difference to your communities. Okay, so the next question we've got, I'm just going to do a couple more questions now because we are starting to run out of time, so I'll just do a couple more questions. So, thinking about the recent heat waves, what impact is climate change having on the work you do? So, recently it's had a massive, massive impact. Our firefighters have been out all the time in the incredible heat, fighting fires, and not only that, fire control have been incredibly busy, and also all the people who support and make it all possible have also been working incredibly hard in the hot weather. So it's had a massive impact over the last few weeks with wildfires, and over the next few days I'm slightly concerned about flood related incidents as well, with the ground so dry. As climate change continues, we expect to see more flood-related incidents, more storm-related incidents. We also expect things like the soil to change. So we might get more burst pipes because the soil is contracting and expanding due to the drying out and the wetting of the soil. That can lead to water pipes bursting and also potentially collapsed structures. So there's a whole different range of impacts that climate could have on the fire and rescue service. So we are doing all we can to prepare for that and to be ready for the changes in relation to climate change. We're also trying to mitigate and adapt so that we aren't causing climate change, and we're trying to adapt and mitigate with switching to electric vehicles. Using biodiesel is something we're absolutely focused on in our vehicles as well. And we always consider when we're fighting a fire what's the impact of water runoff from the fire if we're putting water on it and the smoke plume into the air on our environment. So thank you for that question, Richard, around climate change. So I'm just going to answer one more question before I close off the session, but we have had a huge number of questions. I know there's more in the comments chat as well, so thank you ever so much, and we may have to do this again, which will be a good thing, and also we'll make sure we respond to your questions. But the last question I want to pick up on before I close is, what's the best thing about Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service? And thanks, Claire, for asking that question. Well, for me, that's a really easy one. The best thing about Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service is our people. Our people, they're the most amazing group you could hope to meet, often working in really difficult circumstances under significant pressure. So I want to say a massive thank you to every single person that works for Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service and makes a real difference. Thank you. But secondly, our communities here in Warwickshire. I haven't worked in Warwickshire for that long, but coming here, the people that we meet in our communities at emergencies or when we're doing prevention or protection activities are absolutely fantastic. We get such a lot of support from our communities, and it can make all the difference. So thank you to you and to all of our communities who are always supporting us and helping us deliver what we deliver. So I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this evening, but thank you ever so much for all your questions. It's been really interesting to see the range of questions. I've really enjoyed answering them. Before I go, I would absolutely like to ask a favour of you. I've referenced it a couple of times, but you'll see it in the comments box that we have got our 5-year strategy and plan that's out for feedback at the moment, and we want to provide a fire and rescue service that you want. So we need your views. So if you're interested in offering your view, please do. Just take 10 minutes. It does take 10 minutes. I know that's a bit of time out of your day, but I'd really appreciate it if you could, to tell us what you think about our plans for the next 5 years. So it's in the comments box, or you can go straight to ask.warwickshire.gov.uk and follow the link there, and it'll take you to that survey, and we really appreciate it if you do that. So finally, don't forget that we're also currently recruiting for firefighters, both whole-time and on-call. It's an absolutely brilliant role. The link for more information again is in the comments box, so please do look there if you'd like to join Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service. So thanks all, have a good evening, and I'll speak to you soon.